I'm an animal that's caged inside of me. Got a hunger that grows harder and harder to feed. Wasn't saying to die, said to grow.
You're listening to Grace, Geltman, and Weld on the Hammer Factor. Take it away, boys.
He wants to get in.
Oh, we're already in. All right, welcome to Hammer Factor 51. My name is John Grace, show producer here at the Hammer Factor. I'd like to introduce John Weld, co-owner of Immersion Research, as well as policy director of the Outdoor Alliance, Louis Geltman. Hammer Factor 51, boys. I don't know if it was anonymous boat review guy or what it was, but we got a really, really good response to that episode.
Well, I have to back up for a sec. I actually have a new name.
Oh, yeah?
Predicated on big news that you guys know, but many people don't. Yeah, my new name is actually Jaw Treats. It was actually, I had picked out Gucci Treats, but in a long, drawn-out negotiation, I actually licensed that particular name to Dave Fusilli, who'll be using that name to some extent. But he has exclusive rights of Gucci Treats, but I'm Jaw Treats.
All right. Well, before we get into that too deep, this episode of the Hammer Factor is brought to you by Four Corners River Sports in Durango, Colorado. Located on the banks of the Animas River, Four Corners has been helping customers get on the river since 1983. With a huge selection of whitewater boats, gear, and accessories, we can help facilitate any of your kayaking needs. We have the ability to ship boats, boards, and gear nationwide and offer especially affordable shipping rates to Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and parts of Wyoming. We also offer free shipping on any accessory orders over $100. In addition to a well-stocked retail store, Four Corners is home to a full-service kayak school. We offer classes for paddling of all abilities from ages 6 to 100 years of age. Whether you're looking to improve your role or learn more about river running, our top-notch ACA-certified instructors can help you build your skills. Though this season's snowpack may be less than we'd hoped, there is still plenty of paddling to be done in the Four Corners region. Four Corners is the last stop before the Grand, as well as many other desert multi-days, and we are the premier sponsors of Animas River Days, one of Colorado's oldest whitewater events held on June 2nd, just right around the corner. Use your promo code HAMMERFACTOR, all caps, for 10% off your next online order. Being this is the last week of their sponsorship, Hammer Factor, all caps, 10% off. Get it before it's done. I believe it's peak snow melt in Colorado right now.
I think it's just a matter of time before Trump lays into the post office on those cheap shipping rates.
Ooh, I don't know.
I think you should look into it.
Yeah, I don't know. But use your Hammer Factor promo code because it's about to run out. So we got quite the stacked show today, guys. We got obviously our Rants and Raves. We've got we're going to dig deep into packrafting. We've got anonymous boat review guy is back, and pretty much, you guys, I think we could be done doing this show and just hand it over to him at this point.
Right.
Anyway,
he's gonna have like his own spin-off show, like Joni Loves Chachi type thing.
I agree.
That's a
sound a little bit dated reference.
Our boys.
Wow. Anyway, to get us back on the rails, I have got to go, believe it or not, this is crazy to say, tour kindergarten class today at 5:30. So this show will be on time, and if I just have to leave, you guys are going to have to shut it down. So, well, we're going to get into, we always kick off with Louis here, and I think we'll get right into some. What do you got, Weld?
I get to make my big announcement.
Are you really going to do it?
I'm really going to do it.
Oh, okay. Well, let's hear it. I thought you were just going to end it with Jaw Treats.
No, you ready? Do I get a drum roll? We're moving to Hood River, Oregon.
That is exciting. So tell us about that.
It's a good question. I don't know. We just got, over the winter, Karen and I got this notion in our head that we could move anywhere we wanted. We have no problem with West Virginia. In fact, we love West Virginia in a lot of ways, but we were like, why not? We're not getting any younger. Where would we want to move? So we actually sat down and looked at and thought about anywhere in the country we could move. And after a lot of debate and some travel, visiting, and we ended up at Hood River. We did look at Bellingham. I remember some guy was hating on me for busting on Bellingham, but Bellingham was definitely shortlisted. And save for a tragic housing market, I think we would have ended up there. But at the end of the day, it's Hood River. So we're going to keep the warehouse, and our shipping will still be out of Confluence because we own buku warehouse space there, and it's super cheap. But I think our offices, and we'll certainly have a repair center out there in Hood River. So you West Coast paddlers will have to deal with us.
Well, that's pretty exciting.
Saucy attitude.
So this is big news. I think wasn't there just news of an IR store that was coming out at? Yeah,
that's still happening. Mm-hmm. It's going to be in Confluence. Yeah.
Okay. A lot going on in the IR world. Well, congratulations. I'm excited to hear the stories. Where are you going to stay at? Are you going to just bunk with Lewis or?
Yes. Thanks, Lewis. I'm glad you brought this up, Grace. It's a little awkward, but Lewis, me and the kids and the cat and Carol will be staying with you. And we're going to need some place to plug some sewing machines.
What do the kids think about the whole thing?
Straighten up the couch.
I think they're excited. They don't seem to care, actually. That was the surprising part about it, but.
Well,
yeah.
Oh man, I'm excited. Grace, you're going to be jealous when me and Weld are coming in from Dawn Patrol and sitting down at the same place to record the Hammer Factor.
Oh man, I will be jealous. There will be no doubt about it. Well, I'm stoked for you, Weld. It's going to be nothing but fun for you and Carrie and the kids.
Yeah, it's exciting. Anyway, let's move on. Enough about me.
All right, so I've kind of pulled.
Can we talk about you guys skipping the gorge on your West Coast tour and stopping in for lunch and deciding on the strength of the White Salmon Baking Company that this is in fact the place to live after all?
We had gone to Bellingham. We flew out to look at Bellingham, and then we flew to Portland, and we were driving to Bend. We were going to look at Bend as well, and we just stopped through Hood River, and we kind of discounted Hood River as just being kind of too small for us. But we stopped at Yuri's Bakery in White Salmon, and that was pretty much the end of it. That was the killer move, right? The death blow.
Like, you want to go biking? No. You want to go for a little white lap? No. Let's just go to the bakery. Okay, we're moving here.
Listen, here's the thing. To think that there was a well-thought-out plan behind any of this would be a mistake. This is the most half-assed thing we've ever done. I mean, it's going to work out fine, I'm sure, but there was no planning here, or very little.
I definitely. Hood River was not even talked about for a little while, and then all of a sudden it was the spot. I like that.
Yeah. Right.
All right. On to some ham.
We might as well be the best paddling town in the country, right?
Yeah. I think just instinct took over, and both you and Kara were like, "This is the spot."
You could be right. All right. Jaw treats.
All right. Normally we go into a little bit of a Lewis segment, but we've got some mail we're pretty much going to throw over to Lewis. So I think we should get right into viewer mail here. Let's start with Amber Lee Johnston. She comes at us by email. She says, "Love the podcast. I got to say, though, Louis G. is boring me with all his political talk. Seriously, I'd rather hear... Seriously, I'd rather hear Corey Sheehan talk his philosophy on kayak safety."
Wow, that is a takedown.
Whew. Man. Louis, do you have anything to say about that?
I've kind of run out of diplomatic things to say, but if you prefer to get your news in Facebook meme form, that's your decision to make. And if you want to, I don't know, it sounds like the sort of person who doesn't like reading books. I don't really know what to tell you.
I thought you'd get a kick out of that one. It just makes me want to just do longer Lewis segments. When that comes in, I'm like, all right, you got it from here on out. Here we go.
Just line up the haters one after another.
Exactly.
Hey, you just have to listen to it for 10 minutes a week. It's my life.
This comes at us from Hayes. Before we get into Hayes' email, Lewis, did you race the Little White? Give us a Little White race recap.
Yeah, man, it was good. It was I think we had about 50 racers in the individual class, 3 women this year, maybe half a dozen or so teams. Just like, I don't know, man, it was like really good vibe. Just, you know, like no carnage, super good group of folks. Water was low for sure. Gerd absolutely smashed. We did the thing at the party where the GoPro of the top 4 guys is edited so that you can like watch everybody racing head to head, and just like watching Gerd. I mean, man, just like so impressive. I mean, I don't think I saw him take a backstroke in, 15 minutes of racing, and, like didn't touch a rock as far as I could see, like never got his bow wet. I mean, just like perfect. And then he won by probably close to 20 seconds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, just like, super, super impressive. It was cool.
Off the top of your head, do you know the difference in last year's times versus this year's time? Because it was a good bit higher last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was like 3.8 last year, and it was probably 2.8 this year.
Okay.
So it was probably a minute and a half difference or more. Lots of little rocks out there. I think the plan is to have the race a little earlier next year. Like, we'd like to do it in April or even March, but it's been organized by Capo at World Class Kayak Academy, and he kind of has to do it around the school schedule. So that's kind of been the reason we've had to do it so late, coming up to, like most years now. And so it seems like he's got something figured out. We'll be able to do it a little earlier next year, which will be nice for water.
Yeah. It's some years are high, some years are low. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we could have a good, consistent quality race in April, and I think it would be a little nicer for people wanting to come visit, and even those of us living here. It's like, I feel like in March or April, this is really where you want to be, but by the end of May, it's like, if you're on tour, I think you'd probably rather be in California or Idaho or somewhere like that rather than the Gorge. Like, our season's kind of ending,
Yeah, I know what you're saying. All right, let me throw this over to you. This email comes in from Hayes. I'm not going to read the whole email, but he references an article in what article was this in? High Country News? Is that what it was? Mm-hmm. The article's titled "Your Stoke Won't Save Us." Basically, he says, how does enthusiasm for outdoors translate into action on environmental issues beyond recreational access? Would love to hear you all discuss this and maybe even bring the author on the show. Now, we don't have the author on the show, but the author does reference the Outdoor Industry Association. How should we start this? We should sum up the article.
Well, Geltman, you wrote a whole piece on this, right?
Yeah, I read this thing, and it vexed me greatly, and I just finished writing a pretty long vitriolic response to it that our comms director, Tanya, is currently shopping around, and it'll be up on the OA website, if nowhere else, in the not too distant future. But I think she was sending it off to High Country News first. But I mean, the point is just like, basically, whatever sentiment we have as outdoor recreationists with regard to stewardship and conservation values, it's not as good or as pure as, somebody who has a conservation biology background and, cares about these things, doesn't want to ever go visit them, just wants to, look at pictures in Nat Geographic or whatever. And it was just like, I mean, he like hung the whole article on that quote from Edward Abbey about being a half-hearted enthusiast and saving half your time for your own enjoyment of the outdoors. And he's like, like you going out and getting rad isn't going to save the public lands or the environment or whatever. And it was just like such a straw man argument. And so much of it was, how to explain this? I just feel like it's like taking criticisms of the aesthetics of the ways that people enjoy the outdoors and saying, like, if you're a bird watcher or you're a tenkara fly fisherman, your aesthetic appreciation is so much greater for the outdoors, and it's so much more appreciative than people who are riding full suspension mountain bikes or skiing powder. Like, you shred dogs just don't get it. And it's just like, the whole idea of taking your aesthetic preferences and turning them into like some sort of moral judgment or some sort of pseudoscientific argument about, who has greater environmental appreciation is like, it's just such a bunch of bullshit. And he cites some like social science research from the 1970s about saying that outdoor recreationists don't have a higher conservation ethic than the population at large. And, that certainly doesn't comport with my experience personally or the people I surround myself with. And even if that's true, even if we don't have a better conservation ethic, as a demographic than the public at large, if those of us who do are taking action every day and getting things done, that's what matters. It doesn't matter if you sit at home and like finger your prayer beads and recite John Muir verses to yourself or whatever. It's like, if you're not actually doing anything, it just doesn't matter. Like, you can have the most pure conservation ethic there is, but until you actually like take some meaningful action, I don't care. And like the outdoor industry and the outdoor recreation community, we're doing this stuff every single day. And he has some stuff in there just like slighting the Outdoor Industry Association, which, by the way, is a trade association representing businesses, and like they do have business interests. But the amount of work they've got done on public land stuff is, I think, really impressive. And just to be like, like you guys aren't as good as like a conservation biologist. It's like, when you take that attitude, you're just discouraging people from participating in public lands decision making, and like it's just totally unhelpful. It's like, when you look at like the traditional conservation organizations, their members are, by and large in their 70s. And part of the reason why young people are totally alienated by those organizations and what they're doing is that they're like, well, if you like want to ride a mountain bike, like you can't be a conservation advocate, or like if you want to go out and, kayak or whatever, it's like, that's not as good as just being like a bird watcher. And it's just like, just so tired. And like, he like spins out this story about how, when the Trump administration was proposing the monument reductions, he's like, well, like the outdoor industry, everybody made a huge deal about Bears Ears, but everybody totally ignored Oregon's Cascade Siskiyou Monument, which is threatened by monument reductions. And, it's true that Bears Ears got a ton more attention, but what happened was that, we raised holy hell about the place that is connected to people's actual experiences. We helped educate our community about the Antiquities Act, about national monuments, about protecting public lands. And so many people took action on that and, made such a big deal out of it that we attached like a really high political cost to those monument reductions. And, thus far, they've looked at the whole rest of the list of monuments that they're thinking about reducing and said, we're not going to do that for now, at least, because they realize that people get up in arms about this stuff. So, I would say we talked a lot more about Bears Ears than we did about Cascade Siskiyou, but, the things we did for Bears Ears, I would argue made a big difference in terms of protecting Cascade Siskiyou. Like, if we hadn't done that, maybe they would have cut all the monuments under review. Who knows, So, I don't know. I didn't appreciate that article.
Yeah, I kind of got the same vibe from the article. It starts out with the author, Ethan Link, defining Stoke. So immediately you're kind of like, okay, so this is going to be, you're going to hate on something here in this article. But, they go into appreciative versus consumptive. They throw hunters and fishermen under the bus just the same as mountain bikers and runners and other recreationalists. So,
which, again, is just, like, so stupid. It's like, like if you're in the Sierra Club, like, there are no Republicans in Congress who care what you think about anything. And the hunters and anglers, at least to a degree, those guys have some traction there. Yep. And, maybe their conservation ethic might not be, like, as pure as yours is or whatever, but those guys are getting good work done for all of us. And just to, like, dismiss those guys as, like, oh, they're, like, consumptive or, like, they don't count. It's just, it's so counterproductive.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the email I got from the girl who said I had to re-edit that film on the Nolichucky so the girl wasn't turning over the rock in the river on the video.
Yeah, I thought about that when I read that article, actually. It's like, that is the exact same attitude.
Yeah, that's kind of my take on it. Well, do you have anything to comment on this?
No.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, like, we can do
John
better.
treats, by the way.
We can, like, we can always do better, and it's going to take all of us, traditional conservationists, hunters and anglers, outdoor recreationists. We all need to be in this together, and I'm not, I hope I don't come across as unduly dismissive of those guys, but that attitude is tired.
Yep. I don't know what to say. I agree with that 100%. And that's exactly what I saw in that article. And, I'll leave that in the show notes. You can look at it yourself, comment on it if you feel so inclined. But I don't know.
You're wrong if you say anything bad against it.
They definitely like called out the Outdoor Industry Association in there. So I can't wait to see your response to this, Lewis. I mean, there was like a direct call out in there.
Yeah, I mean, Outdoor Industry Association, those guys are good partners of ours, man. They do good work, and I think they're underappreciated.
Should we get our first quick guest on to answer the next mail? I know he's on a schedule.
Okay, well, let's see if we can bring him on.
Is this the boat volume question?
Mm-hmm.
I have strong opinions about this also.
Hey, guys.
Hey,
Snowy, you there?
I am, yeah.
Well, welcome back to the Hammer Factor.
Thanks for having me.
We have on the Hammer Factor Snowy Robertson, head boat designer at Dagger Kayaks, and we had a question come in, and we had actually a couple questions come in. Let's start.
I'd say 1 1/4 questions come in.
So we'll start. We have one about boat volume, and then we have another one that comes in about the release of the RPM. Are you ready for this, Snowy?
This sounds exciting. So, yeah, those are pretty different, but then they're not combined, right? Just two different questions.
No,
Yeah.
two different questions, but we figured you were the guy to answer for both of them.
I can try, for sure.
The subject line is the Dagger RPM. He says, obviously, leave this out of the show. Fuck Dagger! ! They decide to come out with this limited edition. There is only going to be so many made RPM. They know good and well they actually put these boats into normal production, people would buy them. I don't get it. It's like those assholes that come door to door and are like, if you buy this today, you'll save 25%. Just my two cents. Off topic, I enjoy the show. Keep up the good work. John, I've been a real admirer of your work since LVMs. Also, I could be known as the most southern listener in the lower 48. Look me up in Wetumpka, Alabama. I've also been drinking bourbon. Stay yeasted. So,
do I have to drink bourbon before I respond?
Obviously, the guy's sitting at home and drinking bourbon and probably woke up just the next morning like, oh God, I can't believe I sent that. But tell us about this RPM launch and the limited edition thing.
Yeah, for sure. I guess was it Josh? I guess he must have some kind of internal struggles. It's hard to hate the brand when you obviously love the product that much. But so it is a limited edition release. So we're releasing the RPM and the RPM Max, and that's the RPM Max is kind of a bigger deal than the RPM in a way because it's not been available. But this year is Dagger's 30th anniversary celebration, and so to go with that, we really wanted to do this big kind of celebration. It's really it's about the people, product, and passion, and we sort of want to thank people for for supporting Dagger for so long and for being in business and really kind of celebrate that with products and people. And so obviously the RPM, when was it, 95 that was out, and then we did a re-release in 2013. And so to celebrate the 30 years on, we wanted to bring it out in a limited edition form. And I don't quite understand the sort of door-to-door sales analogy. That's an interesting one because I guess as any notoriously cheap kayaker, if someone came to your door offering you 25% off a kayak, you'd probably, I guess, dig down the back of the couch and find some quarters and buy it. But we wanted to just really thank people and just have this limited edition release. The big thing about it is the same boat essentially, but it has entirely new outfitting. So for the first time, we've put our Contour Ergo outfitting in it. It's super safe and bringing that to the table. But it's
so to be clear, you can buy an RPM anytime you want. You just can't get this limited edition RPM except for this year.
No, this is these as they are in 3 limited edition colors. So they're going to be on a limited availability, and so we
wait, those colors or the RPM
just those colors.
period?
but like next year I'll be able to get a RPM in your stock colors, right?
That's not the plan. No, the plan is to do it just this year, just
That's
in
it.
these colors. And we kind of
So if you want an RPM, this is your chance.
This is it. Yeah, go out and buy it. And so when we launched it sort of officially, we launched it into our retailers, and we actually sold to the retailers all of the stock within 24 hours of that boat.
So why not just put it back into production? I got to be honest. I'm with Josh on this one. I wasn't at the beginning, but now I am after what you just said. I'm not buying any of this.
You're not?
Nope.
So do you?
This is like a door-to-door scam of some sort.
Do you have the same dry suit that you?
It's more like Jehovah's Witnesses. I wouldn't say it's like salespeople. It's more like Jehovah's Witnesses coming to your house.
But you can have a good chat with Jehovah's Witnesses. They're kind of worth opening the door to sometimes.
But why not? I mean, why not put the boat back into production? I mean, seriously.
Well, I think you know this. SKU counts and maintaining all of that, and it also just doesn't have this wouldn't have that sort of unique sort of thank you like limited edition. I mean, they're available. It's not as though you can't get them. It was sure they flew off the shelves, and like I said, we sold all of our stock into retailers within 24 hours, which is pretty incredible. But they're still available in retailers. So if you want it, I guess sort of now's the time to go get it. And really what we did also with pricing. So it's coming in as pretty much one of the cheaper boats from any of the leading whitewater companies of that type. It's available at that cost. So we're again passing that along as a thank you. We're not giving it away for free. That's all we can do. But it's sort of like, hey, here it is. Come get it. That's our take on it.
So are you familiar with the Strategic Outburst Reserve, the SOR?
I have heard of this. Yeah. I've heard of it, and it's.
Have you guys have? I mean, this conversation would not be finished until we discuss that.
But in the same vein, that product's being controlled. Not everyone can get that. At least you can go out and buy an RPM.
Well, are we going to re-release the Outburst?
That might be a little tricky. Mainly because there's no mold left for it.
Oh, really? The value just went through the roof.
I know, exactly.
I wish I'd bought like a...
At this point, it's just like they're trading left, right, and center. But no, we don't have the tool for that. We didn't have the tool for the RPM Max. We had to ship that back from Europe. And we also
What'd you do with the tool of the Outburst? Like, why would you? What happened with that? Is it like in someone's garage somewhere in South Carolina? You just don't know where it is, or did you actually ruin it, like throw it away?
I think it might be sold at the jockey lot, one of the flea markets somewhere. Someone's got it. No, very often we'll recycle those tools, so we'll actually recycle the metal, and it gets to a point where we can't store every single thing. We have limited space, and it's as much as you try and predict down the line whether this historical sort of resurrection of a model might come back. It's sometimes when it's had its initial course and its initial run in the market, you don't think that it's ever going to sort of come back again. I think the RPM was just so unique because it was, right at that, right at the cusp of change from displacement to planing holes, and there were other boats that released at the same time, but it was just a really kind of approachable design. It works so well for many different styles. But
well, I can hear cheering coming from the SOR people right now.
SOR
Their inventory just quintupled in value over the past few minutes.
Can we move on to our next question? So basically, with the RPM, it is a limited run. And are you going to make another limited run next year and another limited run after that, or is this it? Can you say definitively that we are done making RPMs on this run?
Continual limited runs. I couldn't tell you definitively, but I would expect with a big push, this big cow celebration, this might be its last window. Don't quote me on that. But really, there comes a time where everything it costs money to keep that within the line. With any product, you can't just have everything you've ever done, because it's time to sort of move on and apply ourselves to designing something next, something new. But for now, kind of get them while they're hot.
Okay, there you have it, Josh. Another one, right over to you, Snowy. Where I'm gonna go right into this one. This comes at us from Matthias Fosted.
It was written before.
Yeah,
I think you mangled his name last time.
Yeah,
also.
Of course I did. He says, "Hey, Hammer Factor." This is a really good email. He says, "I've heard conflicting accounts about this topic, so I figured it's time to get the real scoop from you guys. The final word on all things paddling." I like that. Is it true that boat manufacturers have no way of accurately measuring volume in their boats? I've heard anecdotes of the ballistic factory giving very rough estimates of volume because they would crack a six-pack and start pouring gallons of water into the boat. Inevitably, they would lose count and just end up guesstimating the volume. I find it hard to believe that manufacturers have no better way of measuring volume. Couldn't they just cover the cockpit, sink the boat in a pool, and measure the displacement? That's question one, but hang on, Snowy, before we jump into that one. His second question is whether volume even matters. A recent controversial example comes from the Waka OG. Lots of folks were worried about that boat being too big at 95 to 100 gallons, but Waka defended the size of the boat and saying that it doesn't feel like a massive boat if it feels perfect, and people really need to stop judging a boat based off volume because it's where the volume is located rather than the actual figure. Is this true? Or is it just a way to widen the paddler weight range for the boat and thus increase the market for that boat? He says, if you choose to use this question on the show, I realize it's a bit wordy, so feel free to paraphrase. I read every word of that, Matthias. Okay, question number one. Do you really measure the boats, or is it just hocus pocus?
I like the idea of drinking a bunch of beer and pouring into a boat and figuring it that way. But we actually... we used to use a flow meter, so you can actually connect that up and actually just fill up a boat and just see how much it holds. There's ways of doing that. You kind of just block off the cockpit and fill it that way. But now with everything kind of driven through our sort of CAD design process, at least on the front end, we can really accurately measure that volume. So we can get spot on calculations of what that's going to be. And then actually kind of use those numbers and sometimes use them within sort of naval architecture packages and kind of look at sort of displacements and kind of waterline lengths and wedge surface area and all that kind of stuff.
Does every boat manufacturer out there, no matter how small, have more or less these same tools at their disposal? Like, does Ballistic have the same kind of stuff?
The volume measure up front for sure. I mean, we would just connect that up to a hose and just turn it on and
no, I'm saying with like the CAD software you guys are using. I mean, is that ubiquitous now?
CAD possibly not. It really just depends how you start your design off. So that side of things, maybe not. No.
So it could be that Ballistic is in fact cracking cans of beer and pouring water into a boat.
I'd like to think that. Yeah. That's a much more fun approach, to be honest with you. I think that's. I'm totally down with that concept, but there are just ways of doing it, but we can get those numbers. But I guess, when we call them numbers, that sort of leads into that second portion, which is, really that's what they are. If you take that number up front and you look at it along with length and width, it's sort of, you could use it as a guide to find your sort of rough sizing range. But don't use it as the fact it's like, okay, that's a 90-gallon boat, it's way too big for me, or that's too small. I mean, it's just it's kind of a recommended tool to kind of help with a decision on what boat's going to fit. We used to size just off length, so you'd have with the old Nomad series, for example, the Nomad 8.5, the 8.1, and so those were kind of length designators. They'd be like, okay, that's a small version versus a medium. I think I'm trying to think which companies. I know Wave Sport used to size off gallons, so you'd have the Diesel 80. Quite a few other companies sizing off gallons, so that sort of shows what their size range is. But we kind of looked at that. Well, what does that really mean? It's just a number. So on the last Nomad series, we went to small, medium, and large. So at least it's kind of like picking an item of clothing. You can say, well, I'm a small, medium, large. But again, that kind of volume, it's really where it's all placed. So I'm sort of on board with Wacker. Really, is it? You could have a 5-foot long boat with 80 gallons and a 10-foot long boat, but with 80 gallons, they're going to be completely different shapes. Or you could put 80 gallons of volume all in the ends versus in the middle, and it's just going to paddle completely differently. So it's really down to a guideline of that number and how you use it. That's going to be personal preference as well. So someone who's heavier in an 80-gallon boat might just like the way it sort of displaces and actually sits in the water. They preferred it to sit sort of lower down in the water versus riding high and dry. That number's only somewhat relevant. I think people read into it a lot more than they should.
I agree with that.
I totally agree with that. I mean, I feel like when I see a new boat come out, I don't even pay attention to what the volume number is. I look and see how wide it is and how long it is, and look at the hull shape, and the volume number is totally meaningless to me.
Me too.
It's like
I couldn't name a gallon volume of any of the boats I've ever owned ever. I couldn't even guess.
Yeah.
unless you're doing mystery moves, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, you kind of get into that sort of negative buoyant point at that point. But it's kind of interesting at demos and events and things. People will be like, "Well, what's the volume of this?" And I as the designer of these boats, I never remember. I'm like, maybe I should. And I'm just like, I wouldn't say I make up numbers sometimes, but I definitely take a bit of a guess at them because again,
You could throw like a British term and be like, well, it's actually 7 cubits.
10 hectares, yeah. 3 furlongs.
Treats.
Yeah, that's sort of, it's just only so relevant. And I look at it a little bit in terms of all these numbers. I've actually been looking at mountain bikes recently, and there's just all this like sizing and geometry and head tube angles. It's like, slack head tube on a bike, 62 degrees or whatever, and then they're up to like 70 degrees. And, they seem like fractions, but they make a huge difference, but it's combined with everything else. So that one number doesn't really mean anything until you combine it with, every other relevant bit of geometry. And so, I mean, don't read into that number too much, but, really use it as a guideline, and then, look at the lengths and the widths and how you like to paddle. I mean, if you took just true displacement and that volume, then you've got aerated water and you've got different volume around you of the stuff you're paddling, and whether you've eaten cheeseburgers that day or you're carrying breakdowns or whatever, it all starts to like throw it off really.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and it seems like it's like like if you added an inch around the seam line and just raised the deck up an inch on the whatever boat you're paddling, if it's a creek boat, I mean, it's going to get the deck's going to be in your way, but it's not going to really change what's going on below the water line, and that's going to add a huge amount of volume to the boat. It's like he's right, and like that Waka, the OG, like, yeah, I mean, it's a big boat, but it doesn't really paddle like a big boat. I think people just get thrown off by that stuff.
Do you think there's ever been a manufacturer out there, Snowy, who's made a boat like that? They did the volume when they were all done with it, and they got their length and width and everything, and it was like, came out to 98 gallons, but the market says that boat needs to be 83 gallons. Do you think there's ever just like do you change the design because you find out something's different? Is there any kind of pressure to ever alter the design so it fits into what's like acceptable in the market?
It possibly with numbers. I mean, sometimes those numbers are what sell. I mean, I know, take the sort of sea kayak market. We worked on a Dagger Stratus, which was definitely, it's sort of this sort of crossover. It's quite performance-y, sort of whitewatery, sort of coastal rock hopping boat, but it's a wide boat for what it is. And I was at a sea kayak symposium one time, and some of the sort of diehard sort of sea kayak folks like, oh, that boat's way too wide, it's not going to work. But it's they were really looking into those numbers, and if it's over a certain number, then they almost like don't consider it to be a true sea kayak. And so I think the same thing could be true with volumes right now. If people are reading into them that much, they might be like, that number's not right, it's not going to work for me. So yeah, some people might have kind of fudged those numbers a little bit. And I think back to when we were working on the Phantom originally, we remember talking with the team sort of what we were looking for up front, and we set under 9 foot obviously for that sort of race length, and then we had a really set number of width in mind, so we were pretty narrow. We were really too narrow at the start, but also we wanted it to be around about 90 gallons. And so I designed the first boat and measured it, and it was like, okay, that's not 90 gallons. And I kept like squeezing. I couldn't go any longer. I could kind of carry volume out to the ends, I guess, but I kept going like taller, and then looked at it, and it just looked wrong. Like it was just this really tall, narrow, long boat, and it paddled a bit like a lawn dart at first, actually. That comes down to sort of chasing numbers. We were just like trying to hit that number a little bit, and we ended up at 89 gallons, but it was really where that volume was placed, not really the number. It was proportioning it and making it look right ultimately.
Well, there you have it, Matthias. Volume does not matter. So,
Period.
I think that we've all pretty much in agreement on that. So, all right, Snowy. Well, thank you for coming on the Hammer Factor, and I'm sure that Josh and Matthias will look forward to hearing your answer.
We've got to figure out some way of kind of getting Josh back in into the fold, and keeping him happy with boats there. But maybe we'll send him a sticker. How's that sound?
That's a good idea.
Thanks, Noe.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Noe.
I've always been annoyed by the boat volume thing. You know what I mean?
So
I didn't even know it was a thing. Like, I honestly didn't know it was a thing. I mean, I know people ask me about it. I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea.
I think it's time that we used our Hammer Factor platform to put that metric to death.
Yeah, that's done. Yep. That's a done thing.
Right.
No more 0 degree paddles. No more talking about boat volumes.
Yeah, because it doesn't matter.
We should go right into the pre-on.
Hey, since we're on boats. Okay, so there's a new boat. While I get our anonymous boat review guy back for a
this is crazy.
Is this real? Before we get into this,
it's real. I looked it up on their website. It is real.
Okay.
Preon has a new boat out. It's called the Cocaine.
This is a real thing. I mean, unless you guys are
Preon
totally
Cocaine.
messing with me. And yeah.
No,
it's a real thing.
that's like IR naming a dry suit the date rape. The date rape. No means yes. That's like the slogan.
I just can't quite believe it's real. And I know that you say it's real and you looked at the website, but I think we need anonymous boat review guy to come on here and just see, is there really a cocaine and what he thinks of it. Anonymous boat review guy, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Well, all right. That's that voice we know and love.
Well, welcome back to the Hammer Factor, ABRG. Can you tell us a little bit about the new cocaine?
Sure. The cocaine monitor makes a lot of sense for Preon. They're known for boats that blow their lines and take bumps.
Okay.
They also leave you jonesing for more.
Okay.
And while in the past, boat companies have thought better of using controversial names for their products, now that Preon has led the way with the cocaine, the door seems to be open for the whitewater industry to use shock value to sell their wares.
Okay, please. What kind of things were you thinking?
Well, through my secret industry connections, I'm able to reveal a list of product names being considered for next year.
Okay. Well, this is unexpected.
This is breaking news.
It's a big scoop you're only going to hear on Hammer Factory.
All right. What do you got?
Well, Waka is producing a boat that is exclusively for people that paddle the Columbia River Gorge. It's going to be called the Whitewater Supremacist.
Okay.
I'll need to get one of those. John Treats needs one of those.
Yeah, Astral's also going after that market. They're going to rename the Green Jacket. It's going to be called the HPV because it can be detected on nearly every paddler living in Ja Gorge.
Okay. This is like we're scooping the paddle sports retailer show everything.
Yeah, you bet. Corin Addison, he's got a really nice playboat in the works. It's so easy, fast, and loose that he's calling it your mom.
Back to Mother's Day. Nice callback.
Okay.
And an open canoe manufacturer, Blackfly, has a new tandem canoe for couples. They're calling it the Open Relationship.
Okay. All right. These sound like winners to me.
Yeah, and recent Hammer Factor guest, Dan Gavir, he's written a guidebook for women.
What's the guide? Is it got a title yet?
Yeah, it details runs where there is a lower risk of hitting their pretty faces. It's called Mansplaining the Mankless, Gavir's Guide to the Glassy Ceiling. You see, it's funny because Dan Gavir said misogynist things on Hammer Factor.
We get it.
Okay.
Piranha, They're known for their awful color blends and terrible outfitting. Their boats are so obnoxious on the outside and so extremely uncomfortable on the inside that they're calling their next boat the Cyberbully.
Pretty topical. It's good stuff.
In Galasport, they're coming out with a composite boat that they believe will kill every plastic boat on the market. They're calling it the Genocide.
Well, we got some I guess the cocaine is truly leading the way.
Yeah. Clay Wright, he's developing a short boat for beginner racers. He drew inspiration from a fellow internet troll and calling his new design the Jackson Stable Genius.
Okay.
And Dagger, they've got a new creek boat that murders gorillas so hard, they're calling it the Harambe. and finally, Weld, your company's secrets leak as bad as a level 6 dry top. I know about Immersion Research's new men's dry suit. It's specifically designed for West Virginia raft guides, and I hear it will be called the paternity suit.
All right, there's a leaker. The leaks must stop.
That's all I've got for today, but if Prion can get their new boat through customs, I'd love to come back and review the cocaine while on cocaine.
All right, there we go.
Thank you so much, anonymous boat review guy, and we look forward to hearing your take on the cocaine.
Thanks. Word to your mother.
Thanks, ABRG.
Oh my God.
We can't. I feel like we can't overuse ABRG. He's like a spice.
Well, I mean, I just wasn't.
The cocaine story, though. Is there any other?
Oh my God. Well, we got a lot of. Let's go through these real quick. This listener mail, because we have to get to our special guest, Kevin Colburn, who is going to fill us in on the packrafting revolution.
We got a lot of people writing about packrafting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. I had no idea. It's like a little secret community out there.
Oh, yeah. A bunch of people are sending me videos of people like running Valsito and like stomping the 30-footer or 20-footer, whatever that waterfall at the top of that gorge is, and like just crushing it. I mean, I had no idea. They're coming out of the woodwork, though. Julio. Do you want to get into this Julio email here? Well, can you summarize this one for us? This one kind of came in your way.
Julio was a follow-up on our weed conversation, which I don't know if you guys heard as much as I did, but I had a lot of people talk to me and write me and just generally discuss the weed conversation we'd had. And she seemed to represent a pretty big faction of the people I talk with. But her general complaint was that we didn't take the conversation where it should have gone. I mean, we missed a couple of really important points. And she wrote a very long email, which I've whittled down as much as I possibly can. And I hope it still works. It makes some sense.
And this is a good email. I mean, there's a lot of great points.
I can summarize it. I know we're kind of pressed for time. Her big point is that if Dave Fuseli is sponsored by a cannabis company, he's actually transitioning from, making a choice of smoking pot to actually advocating it in the paddling community, especially with kids. And she mentioned how my kids, and I'm sure other kids, look up to Dave as an athlete, and being a sponsored athlete has responsibilities. And she, in the follow up to that, she was mentioning that marijuana does, in fact, it has killed people. She says she was disheartened during the episode that no one challenged Dave's claim that there haven't been any cannabis-related deaths, particularly since you had a guest on your show last year sharing the tragic loss of his best friend while kayaking the Grand after doing just that. As a Colorado resident and mother of a new driver, the sharp increase of cannabis-related driving fatalities in the last couple of years is pretty concerning. She also mentioned the strength of marijuana at one point, and I actually had a couple of people write me about that as well, how strong it is and how dangerous it is, or potentially dangerous it is to young minds and young brains. So she's just basically calling us out on that no one got to the point.
Yeah, she had some good. I think kind of her main point was we didn't talk about how it is a choice and it's something that you can do in your own time with your own group of friends or whatever. Crossing the line from doing that to being an advocate for other people to do it. And so we didn't really kind of touch so much on that line. She's got some good points.
I think it's a legitimate point. I mean, what are my kids to make of that,
Here we go. We got to give a big shout out here. This comes at us from Jeff Calhoun. He talks about paddle length and some various things. He's pretty much in agreement with us on that. But he does give a big shout out to Rick Gussick on the Cheat Race. He's been organizing that kickoff event for 20 years at the Cheat Fest. So,
he has indeed. Rick Gusick.
Rick Gusick, yeah, sorry.
He is a fixture of the West Virginia paddling scene.
Yeah, 150 people in that race. Great event. He's.
I mean, can you imagine 150 people showing up at a 12-mile Class 4 whitewater run? I mean, this takes hours to paddle down.
No. I think it's amazing.
150 people. It's great. Yeah. And if
I want to go one year just for the sake of being at the start line at a 150-person mass start race. I feel like that's just like not to be missed.
I mean, how many whitewater races are that big? Fib Arc?
No way.
No?
I don't think.
I mean, the Green Race is actually approaching that, right?
We got like 170. We're a little bigger than that, but I think I just think it's rad to do something for 20 years because that's how long it takes for you to build up your event.
That's the thing, right? I mean, here's the guys who've been showing up every year with a stopwatch, crappy weather, getting this thing together.
Exactly.
And you put this thing together, and 80% of the people are going to love it, and 20% are going to scream and yell and hate your guts for all the work you do.
So
it's a thankless job.
Big thanks to Calhoun for that, and huge shout out to Gusick.
That's right, Rick Gusick.
To Rick, 20 years. I know what that's all about. All right, this comes at us from Nick Terry. He says he's always been a Coke-Attack guy. This message is from Mr. Weld. Primarily because there are simply more options for choosing your look due to color customization. Everyone knows the main objective of whitewater paddling is looking cool, and it's simply too hard to do so while wearing an IR dry suit. Look at what you try to pass off as innovation. A teal version of the men's 7-figure dry suit? Seriously? Well, if you step up to the plate and up the game with some dope pattern dry gear, you will have a loyal customer in me. To get you started, take a look at tie-dye camo and the SOLO Jazz Cup design.
A Solo Jazz Cup.
These are all tried and true looks that could really up the ante on stylish dry gear. Let me know what you think and feel free to send me royalty checks for these great ideas. Regards, Nick Terry.
Yeah, you see, Nick tips his cards here with that last sentence because he wants royalty checks from this. And it gets to the heart of the matter is that the people who want these fancy designs will never buy them. They want them for free or very cheap on Pro Deal. But, I mean, honestly, the truth of the matter is that you go to make a dry suit. This fabric is not cheap. We have to buy dye lots of fabric. We buy 3,000 yards of fabric at a pop, and you're talking, however many dollars a yard. So right away, just in fabric prices alone, for one dry suit, you're looking at tens of thousands of dollars of investment into that fabric. And then you can divide that color up in a couple different, you can pick 3 colors out of that 3,000 yards. And you have to pick those colors very carefully because you pick a dud, you're sitting on, after the garments are done, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of garments you cannot sell. We made that mistake years ago, if you guys remember, with the plaid. We made a plaid dry suit. Remember that? Oh, yeah. Everyone's like, you guys got to make a plaid suit. So we did. We sat on it for 2 years while our bankers went bananas. And everyone else who's financially involved with our business were like, what are you guys doing with these things? Until finally Pat Keller started wearing it and everyone had to have it and they all sold out. But the thing is, when you make a dry suit and you start charging upwards of $1,000 of these things, people get really, really conservative really quick. And we just don't have the money to take these gigantic risks. You look at Burton, their least popular colorway of their least popular jacket, the craziest colorway they can come up with will sell 1,000 times more units than the most popular dry suit ever made. So it's very hard to do all these great things. I'd love to, but the fact is it's just too risky.
I was assuming that he was being sarcastic, talking about camo and tie-dye, and it's like that's cool if you're the only one who has that, but then when like you and your 4 buddies have it, you just look like tool bags.
Yeah.
Also, Coke-Attack's been making the same colors of dry suits since like 1983. Like seriously?
Yeah, I didn't get that part of it, But I knew where you were going to go with that, Weld. There's just no way to financially make it happen. And I mean, it's just the other night I laid into Snowy, who we just had on the show. I was hanging out with him at Oscar Blues, and I was like, dude, you know, I like that Phantom. I paddled it for a few days, but I just need a bigger version. He's like, well, we can't do it. And blah, blah, blah. It's just like the same thing. It's just the world we're living in.
I mean, I'd tell Nick, here's what we can do. Mortgage your house or your parents' house, whatever the situation may be, to come up with the $80,000 or $90,000 we'll need to seed this project. We'll come up with a great print. We'll do the Solo Jazz Cup. If it sells well, I'll pay you back. If it doesn't, sorry. How's that sound?
All right, moving on. This is another one to Weld. This is from Matthew Stump. He says, Weld, only 2 boats, ? You're out of the club, man. There is a mathematical formula that cannot be argued, and you're doing that. N+1. This does not and can never equal 2.
No, Matt Stump's wrong on this. And actually, Yontan from Astral wrote me a text about this the other day and clarified it perfectly. And I was wrong too, but I think Yontan has it perfectly. You need 3 boats. You need your creek boat, you need your BRAP or your BRAP clone, and you need your fetish boat. Fetish boat being whatever you're into. Play boating, downriver, attaining.
Squirts.
I think that's the right math.
Yeah, I gave it some thought too, and I think if I only had to live with 2 boats, I could do with a creek boat BRAP quiver.
Yeah.
Right. Having 4 is better.
I think 4 is kind of where I'm settled in because, I mean, you don't always want to paddle your expedition boat, and it sounds like after this show I'm going to have to add a pack raft to my quiver. Next email, this comes from Jonathan Kessler. He says, John and Lewis was thinking of something and wanted your opinion. I think a fair chunk of our southeastern paddling community and to greater extent those in the Pacific Northwest have suffered a loss due to unfortunate event on the river these last few months. I was thinking about my swiftwater rescue capabilities and experience and got introspective. I can throw and pack a bag well, but there's much more to the playbook to win a tough rescue. Do you think it should or could ever make sense for folks paddling Class 3 and up to be required to take a course or even just be required to keep a throw bag or maybe a Z-drag by law just to place more emphasis on safety? I know for certain that legit swiftwater rescue skills really come from experience more than anything, but I'm crazy to think that a bunch of intermediates on Class 3-4 run. But am I crazy to think that a bunch of intermediates on a Class 3-4 run should have 1 or 2 people that are SWR certified to whatever degree or definition? Just a thought. Obviously, the river decides in the end. Jonathan Kessler, I'll throw this over to you guys.
No.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah, definitely not as well.
All right,
who's gonna supervise that? Who understands kayaking more than kayakers? Like, we have a community. We can look out for one another, make these decisions collectively. I mean, I don't want to. Have you guys ever taken a swiftwater rescue class?
I have, but the thing is,
I mean, I never have.
Yeah, but the thing is do you have to stay up to date on it? Or are there a million things? I mean, you could just go on and on. Regulating, that's not a good idea, but that doesn't mean it's not a good idea to take one. So
Agreed.
This comes at us from the Zone Dog. And this is what I kind of always thought of the Zone Dog. Zone Dog on low water. That's the subject matter of this email. Zone Dog, we've talked about Zone Dog. He's ridden before. He's a chronic narrow gripper. If you ever watch any of his videos, he's a narrow gripper.
You recognize him with the basketball jersey.
Yep.
While he's paddling.
Yep. I enjoyed your last episode, especially the part where you talked about boat durability. It made me curious about your take on the art of paddling low-volume streams. Over my paddling career, I've developed a reputation for running streams at lower flows than most, and feel like this has become a punchline for many paddlers who haven't mastered the skill of reading water. I often get overused responses like, I care too much about my boat to do that run at that level. However, it has been over 15 years since I have broken a boat. I have found that if you are able to read water, are deliberate with your body leans and angles for sliding along rocks, you can navigate your way down streams at lower flows, oftentimes with no more abuse to your kayak than a typical level. At low flows, the water slows down, giving more time to avoid obstacles. Also, runs like the Top Yacht, Upper Blackwater, and the Green Narrows and the Little White channelize the water well so that a sub 200 CFS run is actually quite reasonable. Too few paddlers take the time to develop these skills. What are your views on the art of low water paddling?
Ooh, I'm not buying it. I mean, Bobby Miller's a hell of a paddler. We should say that. Don't let his low water,
Narrow grip
style subtract from that. He's the real deal. But I don't know, Gelman. I know where you're going to stand in this.
I mean, he makes some great points, and it's sort of like it's like going to the ski resort and ripping groomers on like a bulletproof hard pack day. It's like it's good for you in a way, and like I'm sure there's something to learn, but it just kind of sucks, man. Like I like water in the river.
I think it comes down to if you have to go paddling and it's low, you can go paddling, but any chance you can go when there's higher water, that's when you should go.
And I just I don't know, man, like the Little White, like I love the Little White, and like I don't ever want to get to the takeout and be like man, that was kind of shitty. Like I don't want that. Like I would just rather let the river rest, and I'll come back when the water comes up.
What's your cutoff, Lewis, for the Little White?
I don't know. I went this morning. It was like 2:08. I had a good time, but I would have had more fun with some more water.
That's kind of my take on it.
I think I'm about done for the season.
Is this from Jaha Schwalden? The same Jaha Schwalden? Being a recent Hammer Factor subscriber, I've been going through old podcasts to catch up on all I've missed. In an attempt to put faces with voice, I went to Google to see what Geltman and Weld look like. After an extensive database search, the first picture I came across of Weld bears a striking resemblance to Michael Scott from The Office. Later. Josh Walden.
Thanks, Josh.
Michael Scott and
we give a guy a
Donald
moniker.
Jr.
We give a guy a moniker, and suddenly he's like part of the team here.
Before we get into our true voicemails here, this is the last one from Nathan Woodward, and I love this one because you know what? Nathan was poo-pooing on the whole like paddle length and offset and everything that we've been preaching. He comes at us. It takes a big guy to do this. He says, I tried a 265 yesterday. I'm afraid you guys might be right. Shit, now I have to buy a new paddle. So, sorry about having to buy a new paddle, but you'll get infinite benefits in the future.
Dude,
Speaking of which, I had a weird Nick Hines called me the other day, and he works for Werner. I think he's worked for everybody in this business at some point or another, but he works for Werner now, and he was giving me grief about the paddle offset, talking about how lower offsets are. And after a while, I'm like thinking, you sell paddles. What are you arguing about? We're trying to help you.
Was he saying that you wanted a 0 degree offset?
He was a proponent of the lower degree offsets for sure.
Sorry.
I was trying to explain. I was trying to, as the ABRG puts it, I was trying to mansplain to him that he was simply wrong, and he would one day realize that he's wrong, like Eli here. But at the time of our conversation, he wasn't having it. But I did walk away thinking, why wouldn't you want to promote this idea? Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, when people get with the times, pretty much probably 90% of the kayakers in North America are going to have to buy new paddles. Seems like it would be good for business.
That's what I think. But what do I know?
Dude, I got to paddle with one of the Long Creek gangsters last week.
Dang.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Hunter.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, it was nice. He gave me a Keep Long Creek gangster patch.
Nice.
So I think that means I'm probably in the gang at this point.
You're safe. You're safe. That means you can walk through certain areas with no fear.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little nervous. I feel like we've had some fun at the expense of the Long Creek gangsters.
When you go to the Slammer, you'll know what crew to hang out with.
Oh my. Should we play some voicemail here?
What's your schedule, Mr. Grace?
Man, I don't know if we got time for these voicemails. We better. You know what? Oh man. I'm getting ready to have to leave here in just a little bit.
Kindergarten.
Let's get into we're going to have to skip these voicemails, and we're going to get our packrafting celebrity guest on the show here.
Can I mention that there are snakes falling out of trees now on people?
You should cover this while I get our guest on here.
Yeah, this is down your way. Have you heard of the Edisto River? The Edisto River?
Yeah, I know where it's at. It's south of here.
Is it a whitewater river?
No, it's a flatwater river.
Well, there was a dude paddling the Adesto River, and a rattlesnake fell out of a tree and bit him twice. Now the guy's in critical condition. I mean, it was a serious thing.
I got an email from my dad about this, and apparently the story is already falling apart, and the guy had actually just tried to pick up a rattlesnake.
Oh, really? Just did fall out of a tree? All right.
So we might be safe after all.
Was it raining snakes?
Well, moving on here, let's bring Kevin Colburn on the show. Kevin Colburn works for American Whitewater. He's married. He's my neighbor. He has a lovely daughter. He has a lot of hard boats that I see on his car. I know he's got a Delta B over there and a Rockstar Playboat. But he's also a pack rafter. And before I get too far into this, is there anything I missed from that introduction, Kevin, or anything you'd like to add?
No, just that it's the Edisto River.
Edisto.
Yeah, I can offer the definitive source on that. So
Okay. All right.
Grace defined it as a desto with such a certainty.
Indeed, and I kind of feel like you're creeping me, man. You know exactly what boats I have.
Oh, I drive by your house all the time, you know? Like, I
True.
can't.
Like slowly. Windows down.
What you can't see is the quiver of inflatable boats, the sea kayak, the canoe. I'm a person who loves all things that float pretty much.
So, Kevin, are you a lawyer for AW? What is your exact job with them?
I am the National Stewardship Director. I am not a lawyer. I have a master's degree in environmental science. So I pretend to be a lawyer in a lot of meetings, and a lot of the work I do is like a lawyer. But I also am an ecologist. I do a lot of negotiation. That's my primary role.
Okay, very cool. I know that...
So all the work, but like a quarter of the salary.
Yeah, pretty much. And the training. So I kind of make it up on the fly a lot.
Probably zero the debt.
Right. Good point.
So Kevin, I brought up pack rafting a while back, and we had a couple of our listeners write in and say, hey, you should get a pack rafter on the show. I find it super intriguing. Weld and Lewis are kind of like, eh. So you're here to kind of talk about, as a hardboater, as a kayaker and canoeer and whatever, why pack rafting? Why are you into pack raft? What do you do with them?
All right, I can do that. So first of all, people might want to know what a pack raft is. I don't know if they know that. Pack rafts are basically a ducky. They're an inflatable kayak. They weigh 4 to 10 pounds. The really good whitewater boats are the upper end of that weight range, and they roll up about the size of a backpacking tent. And they're designed so you can put all of your stuff for overnight trips inside the tubes. So imagine a ducky, a really small ducky that you can take anywhere, including airplanes and backcountry trips. So that's what they are. So why pack raft? I think 2 reasons. One, they're really fun, like really fun. I mean, kayaking kind of makes you like smile ear to ear. Pack rafting makes you like belly laugh. They're hilarious. It's like going to the go-kart races with your friends. You like bounce off each other, bounce off stuff, fly off drops. It's really fun. And the second thing is they're the right tool for the job. Like you guys were talking on the last one about specialized boats, like specialization and how fun it is to have a quiver that's just has these tools that are precisely correct for the job. Pack rafts are that. They're great for backcountry trips. They're great for long hikes, and they're great for air travel. Like you just want to go like on a trip with your buddy, internationally or somewhere. You can just throw a pack raft in your bag. You don't have to have a car with racks. You don't have to worry about shuttle. Just go. It's like simple and it's fun.
So where have you taken? Where are some of your pack rafting trips?
Well, so I started pack rafting in Montana when I lived there. And I'd basically done a whole bunch of exploratory creek boating, and I have a desk job. I can only carry my kayak so far, and I'd kind of run out of places I can carry my boat. And at the same time, I started to work on forest planning there and try to explore a bunch of the headwater streams there to see if they were wild and scenic eligible, and try to like document them. So I actually asked Alpaca if they would give American Whitewater a couple pack rafts to help me document all these streams in the Northern Rockies in my spare time, mostly. And they did. So I started exploring all over Montana, and there's sort of these crews of people all around the world that are embracing these boats. There's, people in Montana, kind of Montana Jackson Hole, Montana, Wyoming. There's a pretty good crew in Colorado that's pushing the whitewater scene pretty hard. There's crews that do canyoneering in the Southwest. Alaska has a huge community. And then there's gatherings all over the world, like Sweden and New Zealand, Australia. So
it's a thing.
A Swedish pack rafting scene. I might have to get into that.
There is. They're really into camo and like these long flatwater trips in the far
I'm picturing
north.
like death metal, like Swedish pack rafting, death metal, goth. They're kind of like gothed out. I don't know.
Probably.
Am I going the wrong direction with this?
No, I don't know. Maybe.
So when you take off for one of these pack rafting trips, how much weight is on your back? Like, are you going for like a 3-day trip or a 2-week trip, or what are you doing?
I'm kind of a weird pack rafter. So I use pack rafts mostly for like long day trips, hiking like 10 miles in, or maybe like 3-day trips where you just hike in, set up a base camp, and then yo-yo some forks of a creek and then paddle back out. So I bet we have like 30-pound packs, 35, like not much. Huh. And for a day trip, it's like a 12-pound pack or something.
Can you run gorilla in a pack raft?
Yeah.
Has it been done?
People have run the green. Spencer Williamson ran Oceana very successfully like a month ago. Yeah, you can run some hard stuff. The pack rafts have some Achilles heels in whitewater. They don't like junky lips of drops because you ground out on your butt and then you fall off on your face or you pogo. So that's kind of an inherent problem. And really steep holes, they just don't go through very well. There's a lot of resistance. So there's certain rapids you look at and you go, I don't really want to run that in my pack raft because I know I'll swim. But swimming doesn't count in a pack raft, and that's cool. But there are limits. But people are running like Vallecito. People are running some hard stuff and running it with style. So it's not just flubbing down the river. I think that one of the people that wrote in was commenting about pack rafters, and that's different than pack rafting. So pack rafters are like two different communities. There's whitewater people that wanted to do more backcountry. And then there's these like backcountry people that wanted to run rivers. And it's different. It's like these hikers that decide to take on rivers in a pack raft. And that's an interesting phenomenon, right? Because these boats have a really easy entry point into like class 3. So you get people in class 3 or 3+ with like no river skills. And they need to like be brought into the whitewater community and like learned,
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. You have a very calm, convincing voice. Do you know that?
Someone
like you're convincing me to get into pack rafting, and I don't think that was possible.
I'm basically like, here's my credit card, Kevin. I mean,
they're like, can I just pay you now?
They're so fun. Like you will just laugh your butts off when you're in a pack raft. And yeah.
Have you ever gone on like any kind of significant trips where, I don't know, you're covering like 400 miles or 800 miles over the course of like a couple weeks, or are these groups like that's kind of like some trips that I'd like to do, and I think a pack raft would be good for it, like crossing from one drainage, going over a pass into another drainage and out and that kind of thing. Is that a thing in the community?
It's totally a thing. Yeah, I mean, there's the Wilderness Classic in Alaska where they do like 100-mile kind of all sport race. There's all kinds of big, 100-mile plus traverses people do. There's the Bob Open, which is a kind of anything goes trip across the Bob Marshall Wilderness that people almost always use pack rafts for. I've never done those. I started pack rafting the year my child was born, so I've kind of had limited big chunks of time. But I look forward to it. A lot of my trips are more in like the, 20 miles in a day, kind of fast and light trips, or, 3 days where we do 20 miles a creek in a backcountry setting where we're hiking 20 miles too.
What about low water scouting of canyons? Is there like a group of, has anybody ever thought about going into like a canyon or some section of river no one's ever explored or whatnot, and go in when there's no water or really low water? Because, I mean, they're light, obviously, so you could easily just throw them over a boulder and jump in below a rapid and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's the Chris Harges model, right? I mean, he tubed Windle to like learn the riverbed, and yeah, I totally want to join him in my Packraft. But yeah, people totally do that, and you do typically run things a little lower in a Packraft, and it actually makes like low water class 4 like ridiculously fun, and like more fun than you'll have in a kayak.
So what are the trusted brands in Packrafts? Like what's the gear setup? Like what do you want?
Well, Alpaca is kind of like, they're the ones that really like design the first ones and design basically all the advances made in packrafting were made by Alpaca. Then there's a whole series of boats that are kind of other companies that base off of Alpaca. And then Air makes a totally different boat called a Packraft. So props to Air for not just, kind of heavily borrowing designs. And that's more like a little raft almost. But you can basically choose whether you want a skirt and have a really dry light boat, or a like a self-bailing Packraft, and you can choose your level of outfitting.
What do you use? What's yours?
What do I use? An Alpaca.
Is that brand? What model?
The Alpacalypse, though the Narwhal
that's
is
clever.
like next level. The Narwhal has like a better rocker profile, better outfitting, better floor, and it's a big advance.
And these are inflatables.
Yeah, they weigh like 8 pounds.
And then they, have you had a problem with them ever tearing or popping a hole in one of them? Or
No, I've gotten some pinholes. I ripped a prototype they sent me to try one time. They pitched this whitewater boat. I was giving them all kinds of feedback at one point, probably unsolicited and unwanted, about how to make a better whitewater Packraft. And they sent me a prototype. And I did rip that one in Montana, 9 miles from the nearest road, like way the heck out there. And but it was a weird batch of material they just used for the prototype. It wasn't like a good material. So they're pretty durable.
And obviously you take patches and stuff with you when you're out, right? Like
Tyvek tape. The same
Tyvek
stuff
tape.
you put on insulation, you just slap it on a Packraft and you're good for like days, weeks.
Huh.
Yeah.
what do you think, Geltman?
I'm intrigued. Would you ever take a Packraft like for a bridge to bridge day run, or like you would always take your kayak for that?
I do take a Packraft for that sometimes. And here's why. You don't really want to figure stuff out 10 or 20 miles in the backcountry. You want to have it dialed, right? And Packrafts are a little different. And if you want to run hard whitewater in them, or even moderate whitewater, you got to make some adjustments from kayaking. So I like to take it out. I do Big Laurel and hike back out. I do Upper Green and hike out. I just take it out every now and then to keep sharp. Well, as sharp as I get in a Packraft, which is not that sharp.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's interesting.
I've never sat in one. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get
think-
one.
Yeah, I think
got
the key
two.
for me would be to like go somewhere that I would never go in a kayak, so I wasn't comparing,
That's really helpful. I mean, we did a trip this winter where we sea kayaked across Fontana Reservoir here in North Carolina. So sea kayaked 5 miles and then hiked 5 miles up into the Smokies and paddled 5 miles back down in our Packrafts back to our sea kayaks. And then, took the sea kayaks back across. It was super elegant, And
What do you think about the guys who like do Grand Canyon in them and stuff?
I think it's cool. Yeah, why not?
Kind of draw.
I think they're on our turf. They're on the kayak. They're on the hard boat turf at that point, I think.
I'd
They need to
rather-
back off.
I'd rather have a hard boat for that personally.
Yeah, but then those people are the same ones that will like fly to Mongolia and hike 300 miles in and do some first descent, and they'll be comfortable in big water because they ran the Grand Canyon.
Okay. I see where you're getting at with
See,
that.
look at you. Yeah, you could convince me of anything, I think.
I'm kind of a Packraft zealot. Like, it's pretty funny. I mean, so my buddy Chris Ennis, he was joking. He said that he went straight from a carbon race boat to a Packraft and loves it. Like, they're kind of endearing.
Man.
All right,
do-
I'm intrigued.
Let's do Rants and Raves. Grace, I know you got to go.
I do got to go.
And Kevin will want a piece of this as well.
All right.
You go last, so Kevin, so you can chew over this for a minute.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Weld, can you lead us off here?
I can, because I have a good one.
Okay, let's hear it.
All right. I have a rant. And it's kind of geared towards Calhoun. But Calhoun's sort of the target. He's not maybe the specific of the problem. Calhoun has been on Rick's case and my wife Kara's case. She helps with the upper yacht race, and Rick does the cheat race we discussed earlier, about us coming up with boat like a regulations for racing classes in boats, right? Here's what Calhoun needs to do. Calhoun needs to take the bull by the horns and fix this problem once and for all and stop bothering the race organizers with this who don't have time to deal with it. And Jeff, here's what you're going to do. You're going to make a website. You're going to call it raceregulations.org or whatever it's going to be. And you can solicit advice from whoever you want, get a board of directors, and you're going to come up with race regulations. And if you hold a race, you can choose to use those regulations. And you can say this is a raceregulations.org sanctioned race, and this is the qualifications. People can choose to use it or not. If you solicit the right people to help you come up with the boat lengths and the classes, it'll be successful. And then every year you can review that, and people can submit, their ideas, and your board of directors can, and I would say board of directors is going to be you and 3 of your pals or whatever, can decide how to make the cut. And then people can choose to use that system. And when you go to the race, you'll know exactly ahead of time that this is a race, whatever.org sanctioned race, and this is the classes. So Calhoun, stop bugging Gusick and Kara. Just do it yourself and do it right. Thank you. Right? Kara loves that, by the way.
I love it too.
Yeah, we're all starting to do it. Right? It's easy.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead. I got a rave here, and this is, probably not the best rave in the world. It's not really out there, but it definitely stood out to me this weekend as we had an incredible flood in the Green River Gorge. And there was 8 inches of rain in 3 hours, massive mudslides. Mudslides enveloped people's homes, the whole 9 yards. People were cut off. Mudslides that are a quarter mile long, 15 feet deep, were covering roads, the only access points in and out of this mountainous terrain and whatever. And the Saluda Fire and Rescue and the fire and rescue guys were out there from when it was storming and raining 24 hours a day, just busting hump, getting people out of there. So I'm just going to rave for those guys because I put in a lot of hours out there with various things, but those guys were out there day and night. So I'm just going to rave about them.
Nice.
Geltman?
You guys familiar with those little things that people use to clean their teeth that's like dental floss turned into like a little tiny miniature hacksaw?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
What the fuck? Like what? Like who is like dental floss? What this needs is like a large piece of disposable plastic that's just gonna rot.
Sound like you're like Andy Rooney here.
It's like you see them on the ground and you're like one, this is a disgusting piece of trash. Why don't you put your trash away? And then 2, like why do you need this? Like what's wrong with dental floss? Like why do you need like a special contraption that's just like creating plastic garbage to it just everything about this thing just infuriates me.
I did see what was on the ground the other day, and I was wondering what it was doing there. That's funny you say that.
That's the only place I'm familiar with them is just seeing them on the ground, it's like litter. It's terrible. Stop that.
Okay.
It's like the K-cups of dental hygiene.
I wonder what those are called. That's going to be in the title of this show. I'm going to figure out what those are called. Would you like to shut us down there, Mr. Colburn?
Sure. Yeah. So, other than 390-degree offset paddles, which I adore, I'm going to rave about do the math. I'm going to rave about the Ocoee River because I went back there for the first time in like 13 years. Ocoee's not really my typical jam. It's often crowded. It's got a road along it. I had so much fun. And there were not a lot of people out there. And it's just cool that you can go to a river and not necessarily have like really high hopes, but just so consistently you have fun. And the Ocoee totally did that for me. So cheers to a surprise. Great day on the Ocoee.
Cheers to the Ocoee. I've spent a lot of time on the Ocoee. Before we wrap this show up, I got one more thing I want to cover, and this goes right at Kevin. So, Kevin, there was recently a sale of the dam on the green. There is it hasn't happened yet, but it's under contract, correct?
Yes. Yeah, they expect the sale to go through the first quarter of 2019.
Okay, can you come back on the show at some point and discuss that and just how dams get bought and sold and the water rights that go along with them?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Super interesting story going on here with the Green River Narrows. And, I mean, I don't know, Kevin. It could be crazy. It could, there's a period of time when it could get crazy.
There is absolutely risk.
Yeah.
But I will say, just generally, we avoided the big bad risk of them just getting a license with no, or not getting a license, getting a dam and being able to do whatever they want with it.
I mean,
we avoided that bad outcome.
Yeah, there's literally a one-page document that talks about the owner of the dam in North Carolina. Is that the deed? What was that one-page document you shared with me? What do you call that? Do you know what I'm talking about? What it takes to own a dam in the state of North Carolina?
Oh, well, no. Yeah, there was a 1989 decision from FERC that basically let Duke Energy have this dam with no regulatory oversight. And it was like a couple pages. And one of the things they said in that agreement or in that decision was there's no documented use of the river, like recreational use. So it's not navigable. So have at it. Do whatever you want with the river. Have a nice day.
Yep. So we'll get into that. This is going to be a good topic to get into on the Hammer Factor in the future. But unfortunately, right now, I have to go tour kindergarten. So.
Wow.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming on, Kevin.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
That was remarkably convincing.